later. Okay, go ahead, Li-Lan.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Francis Rico's community and those connected to Armonia Health and I, those connected to Pam Alua and the Shaman Connection, and those on the Spirit World Meetup group. And I am so excited to co-host this event for Francis Rico. My name is Li-Lan Weiss, and I'm a healer and stewardess of an integrative health center in Durham, North Carolina called Armonia Health.
Mm.
And Armonia means harmony in Spanish. And I'm fluent in Spanish and Chinese, Mandarin Chinese. And I really love working from the heart and making heart connections to people of all walks of life. And so I'd love to present to those who don't know Francis Rico. I met, I think, in 2013 when he came to Durham to offer healing sessions. And from the start, what I felt was he is love in action. My goodness, it's just so beautiful to connect to him and just how he flows, how he works, how he talks, sensing what he's feeling. And so we've been in touch since he's come to this area to offer healing sessions and make connections. And I also appreciate his connection that he shared with me and my family from Mexico City. And so I'd love to just turn it over to him.
Thank you, Li-Lan. That's wonderful. Yeah, so Li-Lan's in North Carolina, which is like one of our homes, one of the beautiful places. I know White Star is there, and a lot. Pam is there, and Alex is there. It's like one of the most beautiful places ever. So today is a day of miracles. This morning, so we've been having pretty nice weather, and it started raining. And this morning I went outside to feel the rain and feel the grass, and I turned around and looked. And my mother's rainbow sorbet rose, which I've got when she passed, and I've had it. It's her favorite rose, which has been it's December, so it's like it's been like kind of like pulling back and everything. It had roses all over it. It had a dozen of these, and there's still a few little dewdrops. It had dewdrops all over all of the roses. They were all sparkling in the most beautiful way. And so I think that all you have to, her name, of course, Maria Luisa Puerto Fernandez, and on and Ortega Ormecha, and it goes on and on and on. But so to Marita, this is something so beautiful that they would flower this morning. So that's how we know. I mean, you know that you're stepping into the miraculous when things like this actually happen in your life. But this has been a time of prayer, and just like this time 500 years ago in Mexico, we have a reason to pray now too. We have a reason to pray for divine intercession, for participation with the holy, with the sacred, with the great life-affirming love of life for life. Because right now, just like it was 500 years ago, we've got a plague. So got a plague going. We have tumultuous political times, check both times, unchecked exploitation, sadly, active white supremacy, racism, slavery, injustice, and disregard for the most basic human rights of people. This is something that we share in this moment with our brothers and sisters from 500 years ago. So no wonder we prayed. No wonder the prayers went out. No wonder they prayed and prayed and prayed for deliverance. And of course, we're praying now, and we will include a prayer and a visitation in what we do in this. So our prayers were answered then, and this is going to be the story of that answer, and including the story of the indigenous people, which the story was told in their language, Nahuatl. And in this language, which is a verb-based language, it was translated into Spanish. And of course, there was a Spanish recounting, although mysteriously very little was said for some very important reasons that we'll describe. But this story was really told in an indigenous language and held as a story of the sacred. And it was about her. We call her Tonanzin, which means Our Lady of Light. She has another name too that we're going to describe. So she's outside of linear time. 500 years means nothing to her. It's like she's visiting the same humans, sharing the same dilemmas and problems, and she continues to answer prayers, and her grace will touch our lives. And that is really the reason when Li-Lan proposed, even just this week, like an inspiration she had, let's get together and celebrate the 12th, which is the day of the miracle. Her holy days in Mexico at her basilica are the 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th, which mark the days of her visitation, when she came, when she arrived. So, but first, I'm Francis Rico, Puerto Fernandez, Hayhurst, and I'm the perfect person to tell you this story, because on my mother's side of my family, we're Spanish. They're Spaniards from Spain. And my mother, my grandparents, they're all Spanish. And my biological father was Native American. So between the blend of the two, the story lives inside. It's not an external story. It's one that I experience. Marita, my mother, was a young teenage girl when I was born. She was very young. So I was raised by my grandparents. My grandmother, Mama Juana, she was very Catholic, very extreme. I better do it again for her sake. And by my grandfather, Pedro, who was a Maqueto shaman. And what Maqueto means is in between. And his shamanism was in between ordinary and non-ordinary realities, between the ordinary and the non-ordinary. That's how they saw it then. Now we realize what we thought was ordinary is extraordinary. There is no ordinary. And what we thought was other ordinary is not ordinary at all. So he was blind. And so as soon as I could, at the age of 2.5 and 3, my job was to be his seeing eye boy. This was apparently, I guess it was before seeing eye dogs. So being a seeing eye boy was the next step. So the benefit of that is that I was able to guide him to on Catalina Island in Southern California, to places where he worked and did sessions, and where he did energetic clearings and cleansings and helping and intercessions and things like that. So as his seeing eye boy, he would ask me to see and to tell him what was happening energetically. And because of that, instead of locking down my vision, the objectification of reality, seeing only specific things when I look around, I also see the flows of energy. We all have this capacity, and many more capacities, many more gifts. For many years, I'd like to share a couple things with you as we begin to go. For many years, I've taught a course in applying shamanism. This is my current course. It is years of shamanic training and apprenticeship that happens in a very short period of time. And we work with practical magic and healing practices and wisdom traditions and tools and resources, everything from drumming and to shape shifting to flexing the morphic field. It is a path of mutual benefit. And I want to share this with you too. If you want to contact me in any way, shamanzone.com will reach me. Presently, what I am most interested in sharing with you just in this moment is that because of the fires that we've had here in California, wildlife rescue has been a very significant and important thing. Our money is very leveraged and very beneficial. Even a small amount of money goes a long way when you see little creatures like this. And so if you go to my website and you click on this link to wildlife rescue, you will be taken to a place where you can donate. So before we start, I would like to have a word or two about a word or two. Tonanzin, which is, we call her Our Lady of Guadalupe. Tonanzin is the Nahuatl expression for her, and it's just an expression of respect. And what it means is Our Lady of Light. Tonal, those of you that have traditions and have studied any of the Mexican mythologies, Tonal and Nagual. The Tonal is this world, and the Nagual is the world of energy and the divine presence, that other world. So Tonan is the feminine Tonal. It's like her presence, Our Lady of Light, and light is Zin. And you will find this Zin word this is Nahuatl, Tonanzin. And you will find this in other places. Now, her name that she identified herself as, the only time that she actually said, I am this, know me as this name, her name was Guadalupe. And this word, Guadalupe, can be translated in many different ways. What it means is she who comes flying from the region of light like an eagle of fire. That's the deep essence of her name, Guadalupe. But when the Spanish heard Guadalupe, what they heard was Guadalupe. And there is a tradition of Black Madonnas all across Europe. And in this tradition, from the springs in central Spain where the water emerges, and it does all over Europe in many places that are pre-Roman Catholic, pre-Eastern Orthodox, any contemporary, things that are 3,000-4,000 years old. These springs are places where Black Madonnas have shown, and her name, Guadalupe, from the Arabic wadi, Guada, meaning water, river, and Lupe, which means a number of things. It means wolf, it means the wild, not wolf as a specific creature, but the wolf as the wild, and the wild light. It is an expression for the light in the wild creature's eyes is a wild light. So she is known as the wild river, the river of light. And this river of light is not from this dimension, it is from a place of wildness. This is her. She is an emissary from another realm. Now, she created an image to be shared, and specifically to be shared with the Catholic Church. And we will go very much deeper into this image, but I just want you to see that she shared an image for a specific purpose. She's a multidimensional being. She is a representation. She is an expression of the Great Mother herself, as she has said. This is the image that appeared on the tilma, on the Moguai fiber, the cactus fiber poncho of a person that we will come to know as Juan Diego, and we'll discover more about him. So this line down the center you see is the line where the tilma, his poncho, was sewed together. And there are some very subtle things going on here that we will go into also. But one thing to notice is that she has her left knee turned. Her leg is lifted slightly. She is actually in motion. She is sending a message. It's a clockwise. She is moving to the right, and she's flashing an image that is to be shared and sent. And it's a way of reaching her. I'll share you the image that she shared with the indigenous people as well. So this is one of her images. And this is very ancient. This is in a private collection. And you see the same radiance around her. You see the same light. You see the same sparkles around her. You see her eyes are not open, but they're not closed either. They're in that state. She has her acuity, her ability, her presence is open. Her hands are open, and she's a welcoming embrace. She's multidimensional. She's from the divine presence. You see the angel, the same angel that you saw a moment ago, but you also see some things that are not that would have probably have scared the Italians in the Catholic Church. You know, it's like, yes, there are some very strong claw feet, and she's wearing a dress of nature. She is wearing nature. She is clothed in corn. There is a very specific thing I want you to notice. This little flower in the center of her shows that she is aware of a tradition that we will share. In other words, the indigenous story is equally beautiful, and it is a story that goes with. It's a story that is not separate from or different than. It is a deep connection that she made with the indigenous people. So let's see. I think we don't want to go there yet. That image of her, that opening of who she is, that she showed them, was someone that the people recognized. She had been prayed to, and she came, and they knew her. They knew who she was, and they knew the tradition that she had come from, and that's who they had prayed to. So many of us come from many backgrounds. I want to share with you the context that she arrived in. Okay, so we will go to. So the Spanish conquistadors arrived in Mexico in 1519, and you guys all remember that from your history books. Cortez defeated Montezuma in 1520. There was no cultural reference at all from the Spanish for what they encountered and the brightly painted, feathered people. But along with when the Spanish came, along with their sense of the holy mission that they had from the Pope and the Catholic Church and the King of Spain to be conquistadors, conquerors, they also brought gold lust, insatiable greed, the plague of smallpox. They brought muskets, guns, horses, pigs. They were filthy, they were sick, they were hungry, and they were violent. And what they encountered and recognized as the power center of the area was the island city of the Aztecs, that had clean streets, whereas in Europe the streets were full of sewage. Unlike Europe, this was clean people and clean streets, and but also the indigenous populations were in many places. Okay, so the Aztecs were just one of the groups. Just north of the lakes and the lake city of the Aztecs, what was also a complex that hadn't been used for 600 or so years, called Teotihuacan. And this was a place of a great university. Let me see if I can show you some. Yes, I can do this for you. This university, this is especially an agricultural area of there was a number of indigenous peoples that lived that had slightly different groups. One of the groups, though, was called the Chichimecas, and of course by the Spanish they were considered wild, barbaric, and primitive, but they were the people of Teotihuacan, the people that had learned from the ineffable presences that. So these pyramids, for those of you that have heard of the pyramids of this area just north of Mexico City, may have heard that there are caves underneath each pyramid of the three great pyramids, and the caves, this is the Pyramid of the Sun. The pyramids were markers for these caves. They originally started off as very small, just markers to let people know in the valley that this was a place of healing. The caves emanated, just like springs would, an energy that when you were in the field of the energy of these caves, you remarkably healed. This is the reason why people would go to the Black Madonna springs. They would go for healing, and they would bathe in these waters, the wild waters, the waters of light. Here, the waters of light were a type of light that the old traditions called black light. And this is unseen light, but it's palpable. You feel it. It moves through your energy. This was the first definition of sacred, had to do with this place being a place of holiness where the disputes of the different indigenous groups were put aside. And this was a place where people came to collectively heal. It was a university too. It was a University of the Americas, and it taught everything from seed conservation and agriculture to hydraulics and building techniques and fabric weaving and dyeing and pottery firing and glazing and herbalism and various healing techniques, and a relationship here formed with that wild incoming energy of multidimensionality that was prayed to, that is so unusual that it was a totally alien concept. This is Kalchikulkwi. She is a presence of the great mother, the great feminine presence holding this sacred place of healing. So this was one image of her, but actually she looks more like your grandmother. Now, I know this does not look like your grandmother, okay? But I want you to see like a highly, what would we call it? A highly high resolution version. You can see what a sweet look she has on her face. This is taking the camera and making it high resolution. So these people that carried this wisdom tradition from the university, the Chichimecas, were people who followed her way. They were those who followed the way of Kalchikulkwi. They were called Toltecs, artists of spirit. The other, besides the agricultural indigenous people, the other identifiable group when the Spanish came were called the Mexica. Alexander von Humboldt, a 19th century scientist, named these people Aztecs because they were a wandering tribe that came from another place. They came from far north. And they had a mythology that when they came to a place, when they were a traveling tribe, and when they came to a place where a cactus holding a snake, where a eagle holding a snake at the top of a cactus could be found, they would form their city. And this was their city. This is a lake city, beautiful, clean, running water. Of course, they were essentially a warlike, aggressive, wealth-gathering, ruling class, hierarchical structure. And they also did human sacrifice as well. Their belief was that when they dispatched somebody, that the person could carry a message into the other reality. And it seems brutal, but we were up to the same kinds of things in Europe. The Europeans were. So the language that they spoke was called Nahuatl, and it transformed over hundreds of years, and it absorbed words from the local dialects and the common language of the people. It's basically a verb-based language of flowing movement. And then the Spanish arrived, and they arrived in 1520 to this island city, and by 1530, 10 years later, 8 million native people, indigenous people, had died of smallpox and brutal slavery, enslavement, and exploitation, directed by Spanish royalty and the church. It was ruthless. It was an enslavement and exploitation by the Spanish soldiers, the colonizers, the religious orders, everybody trying to make their fortune in the new world to bring it back. And the agony and the despair and the incomprehension of 8 million lives lost in a 10-year period was an enormous stream of distress, and that was felt by the heart of the great mother herself, whose heart was broken. The Chichimecas, the teachers, curanderas, they were the ones who prayed. They prayed to her. They prayed to this healing influence that had been part of their lives. You know, Teotihuacan had been a university, and at various times it was used, and at various times it laid fallow, just like every other civilization. It kind of came and it went. But their prayer Their prayer to the Great Mother was, Great Mother, we are your children. We pray that your love will protect and save us from this catastrophe. O Mateo, is like the most divine presence. This was the prayer. The Franciscans, I want to show you them. The Franciscans were the first group to arrive, but there were also the, I think, what were they called? The Dominicans, who also came. The Dominicans were very dogmatic. The Franciscans were actually originally more loving, St. Francis, but so this is like six of the original 12 that came. But the people were absolutely stubborn and obstinate in their unwillingness to convert and to be baptized. They saw the image of a man hanging in agony on a cross being shown to them as the divine presence, as the one God. And what it reminded the people of was the Aztecs, who were not. They were the interlopers into this area. The Aztecs were not, somehow this wasn't their indigenous place. They found this place and they took it over, right? So actually they weren't really Aztecs. That's a name that we came up with. They were Mexicas. They did not want to, they didn't want any part of this. And so they resisted. And as a result, one of the things that the Franciscans particularly, they called the native people goats. And because the belief was that until you converted to Catholicism and were given a Spanish name, you were not a real human being. So I think that the Spanish had a built-in belief system that it didn't matter that 8 million people died and more were dying, because they weren't really human until they actually became baptized and had a Spanish name. Meanwhile, I mean, things were so crazy back then. The Roman Catholic Church, Rome itself was sacked in 1527, just a couple years ahead of this. And this is the era of the Protestant Reformation, because the protest was that the church had gone into perversion and greed and nepotism and criminal behavior of every kind. This was the church. So this brings us to the year 1531 and this Holocaust that was happening. So now what we're going to do is we're going to focus on the beginning of our story. He is called Juan Diego, which is a name very much like John Smith, right? So his actual name was Chawa Tlatzotzin. So Chawa Tlatzotzin, Chawa Titlan was the village that he came from. So this is very much like saying, I'm from this village, that Chawa part. His actual name is Tlatzotzin. And the village means, this part of the village means, the Chawa part means the mouth of the river. So he's from the little village at the mouth of the river. But that gets confusing because people want to say that that mouth means that he is speaking something. So they said, he's the eagle. So his name means eagle of light, but he's the eagle of light who speaks the river of life because he's from the mouth of the river. You can kind of see how that blends together. But his name is Tlatzotzin, but we're going to call him Juan Diego. It works just fine. Either way, he doesn't mind. And on December 9th of 1531, he's a handsome guy, isn't he? Handsome Sean. He was bringing a meal and water and blankets to his uncles from the village around and up a hill to the place where his uncle, who was a Chichimeca teacher, he was one of the and he loved his and revered his uncle because his uncle had been the one who raised him. His parents died. Juan Diego's parents died when he was very young. And so his uncle raised him and raised him well and raised him in the deep tradition of wisdom and knowledge of the area. So he was bringing a meal on the 9th, and he was coming up to this remote home dug partially into the earth and with adobe with a little roof. And his uncle at this point was very old, and his health was failing. He was weak, and Juan Diego was very concerned. He had been visiting him every day, whereas before he would visit him every other day. It was like, do you call your mother every day? That kind of thing. And as he was walking around this hill to his uncle's home, he heard a chord, a huge, beautiful woo sound. And he heard his name. He heard Tlatotsin, Tlatotsin, Tlatotsin in this beautiful chord. And a blazing light, impossible to look at, began to shape itself in front of him. And out of the light emerged a vision of a woman. And her hands were open in a blessing. And she said to him, I am here. I am the mother, sister, daughter of the one holy being. I ask you to go to the bishop and inform him that I am here and that I hear the weeping and the sorrow of my children. And I want the killing of my children to stop. I want the bishop to rebuild my temple here where it has stood at the top of this hill, where I will bring compassion, help, and salvation through mercy to all who live in this land, to mankind, and to all who cry to me, who seek me, and who have confidence in me. Take this message to the bishop. The bishop held daily conferences in his meeting room where people would bring their prayers. They'd bring donations, of course, so they could have an audience with the bishop, and he would resolve their disputes, and he would give them pieces of his wisdom, the church's teachings. His name was Juan de Zumaraga. And when Juan told him the story, I have met this beautiful, radiant being, and this is what she has said. He listened, but he wasn't really impressed. He sent him away with a gentle brush off, like, well, thank you for coming and sharing this with me, and sent him away. And confused, but on his way home, walking back, she appeared again. And he realized a small indigenous person is not going to have much sway with the bishop, even that he was an educated man, though, by the way. So he said, I beg you, my lady, choose someone important and respected to take your message to the bishop so that it will be believed. I'm just a small, unimportant being. I'm a little short piece of rope. I'm a little tiny wing. I beg your pardon, and I don't want to displease you or make you sad. And she said, it's true that I do not lack servants and ambassadors, but it's important that you speak for me no matter how tired you are. So the next morning on December 10th, he returned to the bishop. I have my mission, he said, and he asked for an audience again. But this time the bishop was dismissive. He said, basically, he was annoyed. He said, how could this be true coming from the mouth of a nobody like you? If this is true, have her give me a sign, have her create some miracles, have her let me know in truth that it is her holiness, that she is here. On his way home across the hill, she also appeared again, but the light began to emerge from an old temple at the top of the hill. Come on, temple. This presence was her ancient self in the temple, the one who spoke the great traditions of the Chichimecas. And he saw her as she is, the great mother of the radiance. He told her, the bishop wants a miracle. a sign to prove that you are the Holy One. So she told him, I'll give you a sign to take to the bishop tomorrow when you come. So Juan decided to stay with his uncle that night because his condition was deteriorating fast. He was not doing well. So on the morning of December 11th, Juan Diego realized, I have to go get the curandero from the village, and it's not my village, it's the next village, the one who can do something for him. So he departed to do that, and he completely forgot in his mission to take care of his uncle, who he loved. He forgot that he was supposed to meet with her, and that he was going to be given a miracle that he was going to take to the bishop. Then on the 12th, the morning of the 12th, with his uncle still in declining health on the verge of death, Juan took another route around the hill to avoid her because he had blown it. And he didn't want to be delayed. And he had food for his uncle and medicine. And she intercepted him. Quite a surprise. And asked him what happened. And after he spoke and told her, she gently chided him for his actions and for not coming to her. And she said to him, am I not here now? I, who am your mother, your sister, your daughter? She said, your uncle has fully recovered his health. He is well. You can go to the top of the hill and find the Castilian roses that I have grown and caused to bloom, and see the fountains that I've created and everything growing and everything flowing. He gathered roses and she helped arrange them in his tilma, in his poncho, so that he would hold them. These tilmas, these ponchos, are made of pounded cactus fibers. So they were very coarse, and they the first time it rained, they would start to melt, and it's third rain, you had to get a new one. She said to him, don't open your tilma for anyone except for the bishop. He wants a miracle. So at the bishop's reception room, when he was waiting to be shown in, everyone's going, Bishop, he's got something really, the smell of the roses permeated the entire room. And the bishop actually was very curious, and everyone was trying to pull at the tilma, but Juan Diego's holding on to it, saying, no, this is only for the bishop. So he was escorted into the reception room, and standing in front of the bishop, he opened his tilma, and the roses, dozens of Castilian roses from Spain that were not grown anywhere in Mexico, fell out. And this image vibrating, shaking reality, began to form on the surface of his tilma. It's 500 years later. This Maguey fiber tilma still exists. The colors are not paint, they're fiber optic. But you can imagine the bishop seeing this. Here's a miracle, the roses within a miracle, her appearance. And word was coming back from runners who said, at Tepeyac, it's as green as summer in the middle of winter. The roses are in full bloom all over. There's freshwater springs flowing. It's a paradise. It used to be a desert. Juan repeated the requests of the bishop, stop the killing of my children and restore my temple to the top of Tepeyac, the top of the hill. The next day, Juan had found his uncle fully recovered. And his uncle recounted that he had seen her too at his bedside as he was dying. And she had instructed him to tell the bishop of her visit and of his cure. It's a miracle. And said that she desired to be known under the name of Guadalupe, Guadalupe. She who emerges from the region of light like an eagle on fire. So the word of this miracle spread. The bishop grabbed the manta, he grabbed the tilma, and it was, people came to see it and to venerate it. People came, eventually they made a painting, a duplicate of it, and touched it to it and sent it to Rome so that the Pope could see that she was creating miracles, solving problems, bringing grace and light even to the most difficult circumstances. Pope Pius IV suggested that maybe her image could be put into the churches, because after all, it was Mary, Mother of God, might as well go along with them. If it does some good, it can't be a bad thing. And the people began to go to church and to be baptized because she was there. They allowed themselves to be converted. They got Spanish names. They were still exploited, but the killing of them, the enslavement of them changed, became more gentle. They were members of the community of the church. So not everybody was happy with this turn of events. I want you to know that. You're thinking, it's a miracle. The Franciscans and the Dominicans, they were distressed because people were converting to Catholicism, not because of their belief in Christ, as beautiful as that belief was then and is now, but because of her. And they felt, that's not exactly right. Well, this is going to play out in a story I'll tell you in a moment, but they figured, oh, well, something is better than nothing. And we're achieving something, so let's go along with it. So I'd like to share a few images now, because we're working to our own prayer and our own step into the miracle. This is the church that now is at the top of the, Tepeyac means the brow of the hill, the nose of the hill. And that's where a very ancient temple, as old as the origins of Teotihuacan, had been. And she had asked to have her temple restored. Now, the version that ended up in Spanish said she wanted a little church, as if she needed, as if she needed a little church. But let me show you. So this is let's see if I can do this. I want to take you on just a little bit of a tour of the basilica. This is the old church, and this angle that it's leaning at, this is the angle that it's leaning at. It's an earthquake area, so those of you that have been there recognize, oh, it is tilting. If you look at the people standing, you see, oh my goodness, this building is tilting at a weird angle. And it's because of earthquakes and everything, of course. This is the new basilica. This is not the top of the hill. We'll see that in a couple of minutes here. But you can see that it's a beautiful, it holds 10,000 people. And inside of it, you can see this is the altar, and the tilma that you saw, the original, is hanging behind the altar, but underneath it there's a little runway that you can take an escalator and you can look up and see it from escalators that go back and forth, and it's part of our pilgrimage to go. One thing I want you to notice is that on the tilma, right through the very center of it, is the meeting line of the tilma that was sewn together. And these images too, by the way, to take a look at them, these little radiant spikes that were shown are now being called by science biophotonic integrons. What that means is that you are a light-based being that emanates light, and that these light beams of you have integrity. You are also a light-based being, like Tonanzin. You are a lady of light, a gentleman of light. You are a being of light, along with everything that lives. You are light. She's showing that. This is looking down at the basilica. Oh, looking into it again. Images of popes in different places. This is some of the grand churches. This is her church, her temple. It's a very small but very beautiful, and it is built on top of, just like Guadalupe in Spain, where the springs were, and all over Europe, by the way, wherever the springs were, where the Black Madonna showed herself, that's where they would put a church. They would put something on top of it to claim the area, and to have pilgrims come and to involve themselves, yes, in the waters, the healing waters, but also to involve themselves in the organization of the church. But this is the power of the temple that is here is beautiful, really beautiful. Yeah, the churches are gorgeous. I just want you to see a few things so that here is her church again. Here's another image from being inside. And this gentleman that you see over here is a very unique man. Please allow yourself this moment to allow something impossible and miraculous to be in this realm of magic and miracles, of the presence of light, sending messages of love and life affirmation. Yeah. Okay, so there was images, the church, a great vast place. This courtyard holds 2 million people, and many of these people. Okay, she says enough of that. Yeah, we want to move on. Let me share this image with you because it's closer. This is a painting that was done by Emily Greaves. And it is in what's called the mother's room. And it's a vision that she had. Very clearly, you can see that her left knee is raised because she is in motion. This is a dance. Her prayer is a dance. She's sending a message to the Catholic Church that was received, and they had no alternative to put her into the iconographic field of the archetypal presences, calling her Mary and calling this a Marian, what do you want to call it? Appearance, whatever the English word is for it. I wish I spoke that. And today, December 12th, is the day that we celebrate her manifestation, her image appearing on this tilma. Because the reality of her living presence is irrefutable, and she creates magics in the lives of those that come to her. And what they're coming to is they're coming to the great mother, sister, daughter of creation. So I've got one story I got to share with you. Let me just see if it's right here. Oh yeah, okay. I want to, before we go into our prayer, before we go into deep ceremony together, what I'd like to share with you is a story of how she's still active in the world. This gentleman is Pope Benedict, who was the most recent pope before Francis. And in March of 2012, by the way, you can look at him, you can almost see it, right? He was called the German. He was called the fascist. He was the one who was going to put the house in order and have the money flowing again and shake things out and tighten up the ship, which had gotten too loose. And he was having problems with revenue flow from the Americas. Money was not coming in. Let's not look at him anymore, okay? There was a problem with revenue coming from the Americas. He was going to do something about it. And there was a couple of problems coming from the Americas as well. They were getting kind of like they had their own ideas and they were doing what they wanted to do, and they were having festivals and celebrations that were no part of the church calendar. It seemed to have something to do with some kind of adoration and love and celebration of Our Lady of Guadalupe, devotional path of someone who answered the prayers. So he, in 2012, I think, if I know what time. Yeah, in March of 2012, he called the archbishops and bishops of the Americas together to a big convocation at the Basilica, at this very place. And he gathered them all together and he was going to give them a spanking. He basically said two things. I have 2 points for you. The money cannot be short-stopped in your communities. You're taking money and spending it on your people and your programs. This is unacceptable. You send the money to us and we send the money back for the programs that we authorize. You don't go freestyling like this. This is unacceptable. Especially being spanked where the Central America and South American churches, which caring for their people was part of the heart and soul of the communities, the reverence of the people being supported. What were they doing? How were they spending the money on healthcare, education, welfare of the people in their local congregations and communities? But this was a blistering rebuke. He said, the second point is, Our Lady of Guadalupe must be removed from prominence in our churches because she is too forward, and we are the Church of Christ. We are not the Church of Our Lady, and this image has to be removed or made to be secondary. The archbishops are shocked by all of this. And they said, Your Holiness, we will meet this evening and we will have a response for you in the morning. He said, that's fine. So the following morning, at the gathered assembly of all the leadership of the Catholic churches of the Americas, they informed the Pope of their conclusion of the gathering that they had had the night before. They said, Your Holiness, we believe that the Son listens to his mother. Within less than a year, Benedict was out. First time since the 1100s that a pope had behaved so badly that he was removed from office by divine presence. And Francis of Argentina, Pope Francis, originally from Argentina, was made the Pope in a reconciliation of the churches of the Americas with the Roman Catholic Church, so that instead of the Catholic Church of the Americas and the Roman Catholic Church, it was one church. And he's a beautiful, I don't agree with everything. The fact that he made Junipero Serra a saint is something I just can't agree with, but still, it just proves that popes are not, infallible. But he wanted to see the tilma in person, and they brought it out for him. And he is in reverence, and he prayed along with 20 million people a year. He prayed to her. 20 million people was the original population that was reduced in the first 10 years by over 8 million. And then the illness, and it took time for it to wrap up. But so this is a place of reconciliation between the Catholic Church's story and the indigenous story of who she is and how she came. Some of the things that you can see here is like, you see these little images of these flowers, which are the flower from Teotihuacan. And I will share at another time some of the images of the actual building of the basilica, how the buildings were built by craftspeople who incorporated indigenous wisdom, tradition. So I think that we have, you've got the story. where we're at. I think now it's time for us to soften, move out of story. The story of then is also the story of now. However, prayer, however you conceive it, maybe it's setting intention, however that feels for you. It's your inner guidance that counts. It's your direct experience that counts. But I would like to check back with Li-Lan because I would like her, because she is the hostess holding this prayer for us. I would like her to share a little bit, and then we're going to go together and we're going to go into a direct prayer to her, and we're going to allow her who is present to touch our hearts and to come into our lives, because this is her day of miracles. So Li-Lan, let me ask you to unmute yourself. Beautiful.
Hello. Saludos a todos. So aside from my personal connection to Our Lady of Guadalupe, the inspiration for her being like the start of a series that I'd like to connect to more this coming year is called Embodying Yin, embodying the feminine, but specifically the sacred feminine in action.
Yes.
And I love all the different imagery that you provided, Francis, of that being true in her imagery. And in the translation of her, the meaning of her name, it's very direct, a lot of movement, like bringing forth. And so that is my experience today too, of I had to set up a client here in this room, even though I had left it open for just this event. And halfway through the session, the acupuncture session, I felt this intense energy in the room. And I asked, looking at the altar, please show me what it is that I need to know. And the energy was one of a lot of grounding, strength. It was a little fierce, which was a little surprising to me, because here I have this sort of beautiful, loving red, spiral connection to Our Lady. And so it took me as a little bit of a surprise, but I just listened and I channeled. And in that Reiki session, it just took about 5 minutes, just everything flowed very quickly, kind of like that light. What is it that you call it? Light of eagle fire?
Yes. Yes. She who emerges from the region of light, like an eagle on fire.
And so in that vein, I'd like to bring it into the space of our self and our body. A message that came to me 5 years ago on 12/12, as I sat in the local Immaculate Conception Church here in Durham, North Carolina. The message I received was, and I'll say this in English and Spanish, if you'll bear with me, Francis. We are happy you are here. We are happy you are alive on the planet at this time. I am not only in the church, I am within you. Honor the divine feminine and God within you. Honor your body for what it is. A temple worthy of your praise, worship, and love. Share this message with as many people as possible. Este es el mensaje que me vino mientras estaba en oración en la Inmaculada Concepción en Durham, North Carolina, hace 5 años, en el día 12-12. El mensaje que recibí es: estamos muy felices que estás tú aquí. Estoy muy feliz que estás vivo en este planeta, en este tiempo. Yo no solo estoy en la iglesia, yo estoy dentro de ti. Honra la divinidad femenina y Dios dentro de ti. Honra tu cuerpo por lo que es un templo que merece tu alabanza, tu oración y tu amor. Por favor, comparta este mensaje con las más personas posibles. And with that, I turn it over to you, Francis.
Thank you. Thank you. So there's the old story that's known to the indigenous people. And there's a story that's told by the church. And they're both beautiful. And there's our story. We are here in a world that needs love and light. We're in a world that needs us to come present, to bring our radiance to life. We need to emerge like eagles on fire in defense of life, in affirmation of life. Guadalupe. So I can tell you this as we move towards prayer. I have seen her radiance, and I've heard her voice. And I've spoken with Juan Diego, I've spoken with Tonanzin, and he encourages each of us. He encourages you to climb the hill to her temple. So together, find that place of comfort. Allow yourself to come to this present moment without thought. Just allow yourself to be here in the presence of just the radiance of life, of your own light. And together we open our hearts to her presence. Together we open our hearts to love for life. Together we are grateful. We're grateful for life, and we thank the mother of all. We thank the mother of all children. And we thank Our Lady, who comes like an eagle of fire from the realms of light. And our prayer is not in words. Our prayer comes now from our hearts. Whatever you need to know, you will know. And whatever miracles you pray for will occur by her grace. O Mateo. O Mateo. Thank you. Thank you. What a gift. Thank you, Li-Lan, to be telling her story on this day. For me to start the day with roses, and now to have you. Beautiful. Thank you. So take this with you. So Li-Lan, this is our first part, and you have a continuation that you are offering.
Yes, and before that, shall we share how to stay in touch with us for those people who, might want to
Yes.
um,
Yes.
log off? Yeah.
Sure.
We're going to have a celebration with the Spanish-speaking community of how they connect to La Virgen de Guadalupe. And I'll provide some translation from Spanish to English. And I'm sure there'll be some translation for those who enjoy that multicultural gathering. So for those who would like to step away, I want to thank Francis from the bottom of my heart for us coming together. And I can be reached at armoniahealth.com. I'm also on the Spirit World meetup.com site. And that's where I'll be sharing that Embodying Yin series the coming year. And Facebook, we're on Armonia Health, as well as Tones for Your Bones, which is a Chinese 5-element experiential workshop with music, which I know Francis and I really connect through music too. And Qigong. And
through Alex's cooking.
Oh, yes. Food, touch, nice smells.
Roses, yeah.
So yeah, Tones for Your Bones. And so, yeah, would love to stay in touch. I think we have a recording that will be available for those that provided your email. And so blessings. And now you can, to Francis's contacts.
Yeah, so it's very easy to reach me, shamanzone.com. Just shamanzone.com, and my email address and contact is there. And while you're there, if you happen to see a praying otter asking for donations for the Sonoma County Wildlife Rescue for the fires that we've had, and you have a few bucks to throw towards that, it doesn't take much to make a big difference in an otter's life. It just takes a little bit. So thank you if you think of that when you're there. Okay, so for everybody who's been watching this on our recording, we'll say thank you and goodbye. But so we're going to move to, we'll just hang out here for a while, and then we'll move when Li-Lan would like to start to part 2. But blessings. Thank you again, everyone, for being here. It's really a blessing to have you participate in something so deep.